The day Daniel walked out of my life, he didn't just take his suitcase. He took my dignity, my dreams, my future. And worst of all, he made sure to leave me standing in the ruins with everyone watching. It was a Friday evening when the truth shattered. I came home early from work, exhausted but excited because it was supposed to be our date night. The penthouse smelled faintly of his cologne and champagne, but the moment I opened the door, my heart sank. Daniel wasn't waiting with flowers or dinner reservations. He was standing by the window with his phone in hand, suitcase packed at his feet. Daniel. My voice cracked. What's going on? He didn't flinch. He didn't even look ashamed. He just smirked, that cruel, polished smile of his, and said, "I'm leaving, Camilla. This isn't working anymore." I froze, the words catching in my throat. Leaving? What do you mean leaving? We're engaged. We're planning our wedding. You can't just. He cut me off, his tone flat. You're not enough. I need someone who matches my lifestyle, my ambition, my status. And frankly, he shrugged, his eyes cold. You don't. The air left my lungs. Not enough. 2 words that slammed into me harder than any slap could. Before I go any further, let me introduce myself. My name is Camilla James and I'm 27 years old. For most of my life, I thought if I worked hard, stayed loyal, and loved fiercely, life would reward me. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it breaks you. And sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who twist the knife deepest. But this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how I rose from the ashes, reinvented myself, and made the man who called me not enough choke on his regret. So stick with me. Because what started as heartbreak turned into the most powerful transformation of my life. Before we go on, please like this video, subscribe for more powerful true life stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now back to the night that changed everything. I stumbled toward him, shaking. Daniel, please, you can't just throw everything away like this. I've stood by you. I supported you when you were building your company, when no one else believed in you. How can you? Again that smirk. Exactly. You were fine then. But now. I've outgrown you, Camilla. I need someone who looks the part. Someone who makes me look powerful. Tears blurred my vision. So this is about appearances? He grabbed his suitcase, his Rolex glinting under the city lights. It's always about appearances. And then he walked out. No goodbye. No hesitation. Just the sound of the door clicking shut, leaving me collapsed on the marble floor with nothing but silence and the engagement ring still burning on my finger. The days after were a blur. My phone buzzed constantly with whispers. Co-workers who'd heard. Acquaintances who accidentally sent me screenshots of Daniel's new girlfriend plastered all over social media. A model. 10 years younger. Arm draped over his shoulder at a gala we were supposed to attend together. The captions made me sick. Power couple. Finally found his match. And the comments? She's way more glamorous than his ex. Upgrade. This one fits him better. I wanted to disappear. At work, whispers followed me down the hallway. People lowered their voices when I passed, pity dripping from their eyes. Poor Camilla, I heard someone say. She never stood a chance against that. Even my parents, though sympathetic, hinted at the same thing. Maybe he just needed someone more polished. My mother sighed, patting my hand like I was a child. You'll find someone else, dear. Not enough. The words clung to me, dragging me deeper into a pit of shame. Nights became the hardest. I'd lie awake in the apartment we once shared, staring at the ceiling, haunted by his voice. You're not enough. I stopped eating. Stopped painting. Stopped living. For weeks I became a shadow of myself. I went through the motions, but inside I was gone. Until one night something shifted. I was scrolling mindlessly on my phone, tears blurring another photo of Daniel and his new perfect girlfriend, when I stumbled onto a video. A girl, ordinary like me, was documenting her 10-day glow-up formula. Day by day she showed her progress. Fitness. Skincare. New clothes. Confidence exercises. Not just surface-level beauty, but a whole transformation from the inside out. Her caption read, "Don't glow up for them. Glow up for you." I sat there frozen. For the first time since Daniel left, I felt something other than pain. Hope. I whispered to myself, what if I tried? What if I rebuilt not for him, not for anyone else, but for me? And in that moment, a spark ignited. Daniel thought he had destroyed me. He thought I would stay broken, humiliated, forgotten. But he was wrong. Because if he wanted to see not enough, then he would have to live long enough to watch me become more than enough. The next morning I made a decision. 10 days. 10 days to reinvent myself. Not for revenge. Not for Daniel. But because I deserved to rise. What I didn't know then was that those 10 days would change everything. For me and eventually for him. Because the glow-up formula wasn't just about beauty. It was about power. And when I walked back into his world, he would regret ever underestimating me. People think heartbreak is loud, screaming, throwing things, slamming doors. But the truth? Heartbreak is quiet. It's lying in bed at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling. It's the silence of unanswered texts. Standing in front of a mirror, looking at your own reflection and not recognizing the person staring back. That's where I was after Daniel left. Not loud. Not raging. Just broken. The first week was a blur. I called in sick to work twice, but even when I forced myself into the office, I was barely present. My colleagues pretended not to stare at the dark circles under my eyes, the unbrushed hair tied back in a messy bun. At lunch, I sat alone while whispers hummed around me. Did you see Daniel's new girlfriend? She's stunning. No wonder he left. Poor Camilla. She never stood a chance. I pretended not to hear. But every word burrowed deep into my chest like a thorn. The second week was worse. Vanessa, a woman from my team who had always been more of an acquaintance than a friend, invited me to a networking dinner. I almost declined, but something in me thought maybe it would be good to get out. It was a mistake. The moment I walked into that restaurant, I felt it. The stares, the pity, the curiosity. And then I saw him. Daniel. Not just Daniel. Daniel with her. His new girlfriend, all legs and red lipstick, draped across his arm like she'd been born there. He saw me. He smirked. And for the rest of the night I couldn't breathe. I left before dessert, choking on humiliation, tears spilling down my face as I stumbled to my car. That was the night I hit rock bottom. The next morning I couldn't face the world. I stayed in bed, blinds closed, phone on silent. My body ached with exhaustion from crying. And somewhere between sleep and despair, a cruel thought settled in. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I really wasn't enough. My mother's words didn't help. She called one afternoon, her tone soft but sharp underneath. Honey, sometimes men like Daniel need women who fit better. More polished. More glamorous. Fit better. Her words gutted me. She didn't mean to be cruel, but she may as well have driven a nail into my chest. I wanted to scream. I supported him. I loved him when he was nothing. How am I the one who doesn't fit? But instead I just whispered, "Okay, Mom," and hung up. The days blurred. I stopped painting. Stopped reading. I even stopped cooking, surviving on cheap takeout and cereal. My once tidy apartment turned into a mess of dirty dishes, unopened mail and abandoned laundry. And every night I scrolled. Scrolled through photos of Daniel and his glamorous new love. Scrolled through comments calling them a power couple. Scrolled through lies until I couldn't see straight. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. It was like pressing on a bruise. Painful. Addictive. Then came the lowest moment of all. I was walking home from work when I overheard two women on the street talking. Did you hear about Daniel Caldwell? He's dating that model now. Oh, thank God. His ex was so ordinary. Ordinary. I froze mid-step, my chest constricting, tears stinging my eyes. Ordinary. That's how the world saw me. That's what I was reduced to after years of loyalty and love. Just ordinary. That night, I collapsed onto the floor of my bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. My hair was greasy, my eyes puffy, my skin pale. I looked nothing like the woman Daniel had proposed to. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I'd lost myself long before he walked out. But as I sat there, sobbing into my hands, something shifted. A tiny voice, small but stubborn, whispered inside me. What if you fought back? Not against him. Against this version of yourself. The version that believed him. The version that accepted not enough. The version that thought ordinary was the end of the story. What if you proved them all wrong? I thought about the video I had seen days earlier. The girl who documented her 10-day glow-up formula. 10 days. 10 days of focused effort. Not just makeup or clothes, but discipline. Habits. Health. Mindset. It wasn't about impressing anyone else. It was about looking in the mirror and seeing a woman I could respect again. I wiped my tears, stood up and stared at my reflection with new eyes. I wasn't glowing yet. But I could. And I would. Because Daniel's biggest mistake wasn't leaving me. It was underestimating me. The next morning I opened a notebook and wrote at the top of the page, 10-day glow-up formula. For me. And for the first time in weeks I felt something stir in my chest. Not pain. Not shame. Hope. The next morning I couldn't face the world. I stayed in bed, blinds closed, phone on silent. My body ached with exhaustion from crying. And somewhere between sleep and despair, a cruel thought settled in. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I really wasn't enough. My mother's words didn't help. She called one afternoon, her tone soft but sharp underneath. Honey, sometimes men like Daniel need women who fit better. More polished. More glamorous. Fit better. Her words gutted me. She didn't mean to be cruel, but she may as well have driven a nail into my chest. I wanted to scream. I supported him. I loved him when he was nothing. How am I the one who doesn't fit? But instead I just whispered, "Okay, Mom," and hung up. The days blurred. I stopped painting. Stopped reading. I even stopped cooking, surviving on cheap takeout and cereal. My once tidy apartment turned into a mess of dirty dishes, unopened mail and abandoned laundry. And every night I scrolled. Scrolled through photos of Daniel and his glamorous new love. Scrolled through comments calling them a power couple. Scrolled through lies until I couldn't see straight. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. It was like pressing on a bruise. Painful. Addictive. Then came the lowest moment of all. I was walking home from work when I overheard two women on the street talking. "Did you hear about Daniel Caldwell? He's dating that model now." "Oh, thank God. His ex was so ordinary." Ordinary. I froze mid-step, my chest constricting, tears stinging my eyes. Ordinary. That's how the world saw me. That's what I was reduced to after years of loyalty and love. Just ordinary. That night I collapsed onto the floor of my bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. My hair was greasy, my eyes puffy, my skin pale. I looked nothing like the woman Daniel had proposed to. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I'd lost myself long before he walked out. But as I sat there sobbing into my hands, something shifted. A tiny voice, small but stubborn, whispered inside me. What if you fought back? Not against him. Against this version of yourself. The version that believed him. The version that accepted not enough. The version that thought ordinary was the end of the story. What if you proved them all wrong? I thought about the video I had seen days earlier. The girl who documented her 10-day glow-up formula. 10 days. 10 days of focused effort. Not just makeup or clothes, but discipline. Habits. Health. Mindset. It wasn't about impressing anyone else. It was about looking in the mirror and seeing a woman I could respect again. I wiped my tears, stood up and stared at my reflection with new eyes. I wasn't glowing yet. But I could. And I would. Because Daniel's biggest mistake wasn't leaving me. It was underestimating me. The next morning I opened a notebook and wrote at the top of the page, 10-day glow-up formula. For me. And for the first time in weeks I felt something stir in my chest. Not pain. Not shame. Hope. When I completed the 10th day of the glow-up challenge, I thought the journey was over. But really it had only begun. The challenge gave me momentum, but it was what happened afterward. The choices I made, the habits I kept, the fire I stoked, that turned me from broken into unstoppable. And the world started to notice. The first ripple came at work. 2 weeks after my transformation began, I was called into the boardroom to present a campaign proposal. Normally, I would have sat quietly, letting others take the lead. But this time I walked in wearing a fitted navy blazer, chin high, eyes steady. As I clicked through slides, I spoke with conviction. My voice didn't shake. My ideas didn't hide. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then my boss leaned forward, eyes wide. "Camilla," he said slowly, "that was brilliant." The team nodded. Some even clapped. And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. The second ripple came socially. Friends who had once drifted away started calling again. "You seem different," they said over brunch. "Stronger. Happier. What's your secret?" I laughed softly. No secret. Just 10 days that changed everything. At bars and restaurants, strangers turned their heads when I walked in. Not because I was the most glamorous woman in the room, but because I radiated something Daniel had convinced me I didn't have. Confidence. And confidence is magnetic. But the biggest ripple came from within. I no longer checked Daniel's social media obsessively. I no longer cared about his glamorous outings or the flawless photos of him and his new love. Instead, I cared about me. I cared about building a life that didn't revolve around proving myself to a man who had discarded me. And the more I cared for myself, the freer I became. By month 3, the transformation was undeniable. Physically, I was healthier than ever. I worked out regularly, ate clean, and slept deeply. My skin glowed. My eyes shone. My wardrobe reflected who I was becoming. Tailored, elegant, effortless. Mentally, I was sharper. I journaled every morning, wrote affirmations, meditated. I no longer drowned in self-doubt. I swam in self-belief. Professionally, I was thriving. Promotions loomed on the horizon. Colleagues sought my input. My boss trusted me with projects I never would have imagined handling before. And emotionally, I was grounded. Daniel's voice no longer haunted me. His words, "Not enough," had lost their power. Because I knew without a shred of doubt that I was more than enough. Of course, the universe has a funny way of testing you once you rise. And my test came on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. I was at a cafe downtown sipping a cappuccino and sketching designs for fun, when a voice cut through the air. "Camilla." I froze. That voice. Oh, familiar. I turned and there he was. Daniel. Time slowed. He looked different. The arrogance was still there, but his face was tired, his eyes slightly sunken. The model he had left me for was nowhere in sight. For a split second his smirk returned. But then his eyes swept over me, my glowing skin, my elegant blouse, the quiet confidence radiating from my posture, and the smirk faltered. "Wow," he breathed. "You look incredible." I tilted my head, sipping my coffee slowly. "Do I?" His gaze lingered too long, his charm cracking at the edges. "It's been a while. We should catch up." Catch up. As if he hadn't crushed me. As if he hadn't called me ordinary. As if he hadn't thrown me away like trash. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled. Calm, measured, victorious. Because in that moment, I realized the glow-up wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. And no matter what Daniel saw, what mattered most was what I saw. A woman who had risen. A woman he could never break again. I leaned back in my chair, my voice smooth. "Funny. 6 months ago you said I wasn't enough. Looks like you were wrong." His face paled, his mouth opening to respond. But I didn't give him the chance. I stood, gathered my things and walked out. Not hurried. Not broken. Glowing. And for the first time I didn't look back. Running into Daniel at the cafe had been unexpected. But what came after proved that karma always arrives right on schedule. Because Daniel wasn't done. And for the first time in our entire relationship, the power was no longer his. The very next week I saw his name flash across my phone. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a glitch. After all, we hadn't spoken since he left me. But no, the messages came one after another. "Camilla, I've been thinking about you. You looked amazing the other day. Can we talk? I made a mistake." Mistake. I almost laughed out loud when I read it. 6 months ago I wasn't enough. Now suddenly I was everything he wanted again. No, I wasn't fooled. I knew what this was. His new life wasn't so shiny anymore. The glamorous model wasn't sticking around through the financial scandals and the whispers of trouble surrounding his company. And Daniel, Mr. Untouchable, was scrambling. And when men like him scramble, they always look backward, hoping the women they once crushed are still waiting in the ashes. But I wasn't waiting. I was thriving. He didn't stop. "Camilla, please. Let me explain. You're different now. Stronger. More beautiful. I miss you." I stared at those words, shaking my head. He missed me. No, he missed the safety I gave him. He missed the loyalty. He missed the woman who had once poured her soul into supporting him while he built his empire. But that woman was gone. And in her place stood someone he couldn't control anymore. 2 weeks later, fate decided to twist the knife. I was attending a networking gala for work. A sleek, black tie event with clients and industry leaders. I wore a deep emerald gown that hugged me in all the right places, my hair styled in soft waves, confidence radiating from every step. As I entered the ballroom, champagne glass in hand, I felt his eyes before I saw him. "Daniel." standing near the bar watching me like a man seeing the sun after years in the dark. He approached quickly, a smile plastered on his face. "Camilla, you look stunning." I raised a brow, unbothered. "Thank you." He shifted, suddenly awkward. "Wasn't it? I made mistakes. Big ones. Leaving you was the worst decision of my life." I sipped my champagne slowly, letting the silence stretch. People nearby glanced our way, curious. Daniel, the once confident millionaire, fidgeting like a schoolboy. Finally, I tilted my head. "You told me I wasn't enough, Daniel. Do you remember that?" His face flushed. "I was wrong. You've grown so much. You're powerful now. We could." I cut him off with a soft laugh. "No, Daniel. I was enough back then too. You just couldn't see it." His charm faltered. He leaned in, desperation creeping into his voice. "Camilla, please. I can make it up to you. Let's start over. I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment I just looked at him. The man who had once shattered me with a single sentence. The man who now stood trembling, begging for a second chance. And then I smiled. Not cruelly. Not bitterly. But with the calm of someone who has already won. "You don't get a second chance at me," I said softly. "You threw that away." The look on his face was priceless. But pain, regret. And around us I could feel the whispers beginning. Because Daniel wasn't used to being rejected. Especially not publicly. I set my glass down, straightened my gown and walked away. Not hurried. Not flustered. Glowing. That night as I slipped into bed I realized something important. The glow-up formula hadn't just transformed my appearance. It had transformed my power. Daniel could no longer touch me. His words, his rejection, his betrayal. None of it held weight anymore. Because I had risen so high he couldn't reach me even if he tried. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. Revenge stories usually end with destruction. Someone loses their money, their job, their reputation. But mine ended with freedom. Because my glow-up wasn't about Daniel. Not really. It was about me. The weeks after the gala were strangely quiet. Daniel's messages dwindled, his desperate pleas giving way to silence. Word spread that his company was faltering, lawsuits piling up, investors fleeing. The model who replaced me had already replaced herself with someone newer, wealthier, shinier. Daniel Caldwell, the man who once stood on a pedestal above me, was slipping. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. One afternoon I bumped into an old colleague who used to gush about Daniel. She glanced around before whispering, "I heard he's almost broke. Can you believe it?" I smiled politely, hiding the satisfaction that bubbled inside me. Yes, I could believe it. Because karma doesn't miss. And Daniel had it coming. Meanwhile my life was blooming. At work I was promoted to senior director. I had my own office overlooking the skyline, a team that respected me and projects worth millions under my guidance. Personally I traveled. Not for escape but for joy. Paris, Kyoto, Santorini. I breathed in the world, painted sunsets on beaches and wrote in journals filled with gratitude instead of grief. And everywhere I went, people noticed not the clothes I wore or the money I spent, but the confidence I carried. The glow that no one could steal. But the moment that sealed it all came unexpectedly. I was at a charity event presenting a campaign for the firm when I felt eyes on me. I turned and there he was. Daniel. Not the polished man I once knew. He looked older, worn, shoulders slumped under a suit that no longer fit. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something I never thought I'd see in him. Shame. For a split second our eyes locked. And in that instant I saw everything. The man who called me not enough. The man who left me broken. The man who now stood watching, realizing too late that I had risen higher than he could ever reach. I smiled. Not with cruelty. Not with bitterness. But with peace. And then I turned back to the stage, continuing my presentation, my voice strong and clear. Because he was no longer part of my story. That night as I stood on my balcony overlooking the city, I thought back to the girl on day one of the glow-up formula. Hollow, broken, clinging to scraps of dignity. And then I thought of the woman I had become. Whole, powerful, free. The lesson was clear. The sweetest revenge isn't making them hurt. It's making yourself untouchable. Daniel stole my past. But I built my future. And the future is mine. So here I stand. Camilla James. Not his ex. Not his shadow. Not ordinary. But extraordinary. More than enough. and glowing brighter than ever.